so I thought, okay, so what was my wilderness experience? What, did I go out there seeking something? Not really, I just wanted to go camping, you know, basically. And, but what I found out there was something very real. And so that's what I'm going to talk about this morning, is how you can find a wilderness experience and you don't have to go to the wilderness. You know, because what I learned out there, I can use it here. And so a wilderness is defined as, loosely, my definition, is an area, an environment that is really untouched or unchanged or unmarked by man. And when you're in an area like that, you're just a visitor, you're just passing through. The amazing thing, I found this book on Facebook months ago, and so I ordered it, and it's called Wilderness, the Gateway to the Soul. Now, I've read most of it. The dude, he could have stopped after the first chapter, because it's basically the same stuff all the way through. He's just talking about different wilderness areas. But what I found is that when I'm out there anywhere where I can be alone, and where I can be quiet, where I can disconnect from the cell phone or the electronics and all that stuff, I can have that wilderness experience. And when I was young, I used to love, I'd go fishing, hunting, stuff like that all the time. And as I've aged, you know, I have found that I still like to be out in them areas, but I don't necessarily enjoy the harvesting of the fish or the animals. I don't do it. I haven't done it. I got more fishing stuff in my garage you can shake a stick at, and I just don't have the desire to go out and jerk some fish out of the water. You know, I've seen this commercial or something where they had a fish up here and he's sticking a hook down into the sports store and jerking the angler out. I thought, hey, you know, why are we taking them out of their environment? I like to eat them, but anyhow, I digress. So a wilderness, you know, a wilderness experience is easy to create on your own to some extent. I've taken Rosemary out a couple times. I told her this morning she wasn't into talk, but now she is. Just into the woods, you know, for very short walks. And it's just amazing to watch her, you know, just to watch her, because it will light you up. And so my wilderness experience is where, to define my experience, is to where I'm free, disconnected, which reconnects me with the source, with where I come from. And this guy in his book, he talks about, you know, when he's in areas that you look at these rocks, they've been here forever. And they're made out of the same stuff that I'm made out of. And they're going to be here forever. And when I'm passed from this life, I'll still be here, because I'm made out of that same stuff them rocks are. You know, it's just like it says in the Bible, dust to dust, ashes to ashes. But we're eternal. And that's very, you know, I didn't think about all this stuff when I was out there. But what I found was a connectedness with the source, with God. And so I'm going to read a little bit from this book. And just a very short, it's kind of this first part's wrote in prose, sort of. And I'm glad Brian's not here, because I don't know if that's the right word for it or not. But he was in the Indian Creek Wilderness in Utah. And he says, and this is kind of this is serious, when you get out there, when I went out into the Rocky Mountains last year, after a day, I'm thinking, what was I thinking? Why am I out here? You know, what is the purpose of this? When I was in North Georgia last year when it was 100 degrees out, why am I out here? And said, why am I in this desert all alone? Why did I choose to put myself here? My mind searches for an answer, finds none. It's cloudy and the wind is picked up. Wrapped in my sleeping bag, I stare out to a sea of sandstone, ripples, folds, peaks, and mounds. They stretch out for miles, off to the distant mountain ranges, far beyond. I'm here, the stillness, the silence, it's absolute, deafening in its purity. This land heals, cleanses the mind. But first you must get away from the machines, away from the monsters. It's possible, but you must be willing to walk, and it's worth it. And he goes on and on. It's basically the same. And over here it says, where the details of my life melt away, and all that's left is this moment, right here, right now. My God, how long has it been this time? How long since I've stopped this maddening chatter in my head? Weeks, months? And it says, I have found God. I have found Eden. And, I've never been to Utah, but that's my experience out there, is that I can find God. And so what I've learned now is I can find Him in my front yard. I've got 3 chairs and I think God protects them, because they went through a couple tornadoes and a hurricane, and they ain't never blown away. And they're just plastic chairs. They're laying upside down in my front yard right now. But I can go out there and sit in my front yard and be quiet and watch the squirrels and just disconnect. Just let everything go. And to me, that's a spiritual thing. And so what I found in life is that there's times when, so the definition of a wilderness is untouched by man, unimproved. There's times in my life where I've been in a spiritual wilderness. A wilderness where I'm not letting God in, where it's untouched by God. And so that's the challenge then. You get very dark, you get very deep. And so what do you have to do? I went through one of them areas like that, and was probably still in it when I first started coming here. And by being able to be set free from the notions of the God that I understood before, I've been able to come out of that spiritual wilderness. And it's a beautiful thing. It's much more enlightening, much more pleasant life, when I don't have to worry about being judged. I got a call last night from a friend, and I'm in recovery, and this fella's in recovery. He's out in North Dakota or South Dakota or somewhere, and his wife has gotten into sounds like a very evangelical, fundamental church, and they're trying to tell him that he shouldn't go to Alcoholics Anonymous, which is what saved his life. And he's in that spiritual wilderness right now. He's in it because he's possibly could lose everything. He could lose his life if he starts drinking again, and he could lose his wife if he don't stop going to AA. And that's a very tough situation to be in. But I talked to him last night. I said, if you just keep your focus on your purpose in AA, it's not for salvation, it's to stay sober and help other people. Let the others follow their own path, and it'll all work out. God has it. And that's the way you get through a wilderness. When you're in a wilderness, if you don't have water, we went through a stretch of over about 25 miles. There was no water sources, and we just had set on the book, this one here would have a trickle maybe in 25 miles. And so we had to walk. We were running out of water. We had to keep walking. We just had to have faith that water was going to be there. And we did. What choice did we have? We could have sit down right there and died of thirst, or we could keep walking. Or we could turn back and go to the desert that we'd left, So we keep walking, and there's a trickle when we got there. Just a very light trickle. But it was there. It was there. So let me talk to you a little bit about these pictures. This one over here is a very kind of a spiritual picture for me. For a year and a half before I went on this hiking trip, I had two pictures on the wall in my office because I believe in visualization and keeping, that's what's going to get me there. What's going to keep me focused on the process and make it eventually happen. One of the pictures on my wall is basically that scene right there. That same pond, same mountain, same canyon, everything. Now I didn't realize that until a year after I got back. I was looking at that and I said, and I took that picture with my telephone. Because that was a very hard day on the trail, very tough, one of the toughest days. Raining, cold. I had my camera was in my pack. I didn't want to take it off and get it out, so I just took my phone out because I had to have that picture. And I'm standing in my office and I said, looking at that picture behind me, I have that picture on my phone. Sure enough, there it was. And so I printed it out. And that is that's on the Continental Divide, and it's at the Elk Creek Canyon. Going down, you go down from there to the Elk Creek Mine, and we walked down through there, and it's very steep, and we camped at there's an old miner shack from back in the 1850s, and we camped right outside that shack. And the next day, earlier that day there, we'd been walking, and we'd passed a Jeep 25, 30 miles back up on the trail at a parking lot. And the next day we get up, we're going down this, and it was the toughest descent. Rocks, I mean, it was tough all the way down that trail. Steep. And we see a guy coming up towards us, and he's walking like this. He's taking one step, then he's doing this. And he's going uphill, up these mountains. The dude had a prosthetic leg, and he was probably 80 years old. And I watched him, and I said, because I've been suffering bad. And I said, and the other guy with us that was ahead of us, when we talked to him later that day, he said, yeah, he talked to him, and that was his Jeep that we passed yesterday. So here this old dude was, he walked from his Jeep all the way down there, now he's walking back. And I learned from him, that was kind of a thing I learned from him because I was killing myself on these climbs. And that slow down. You don't have to rush. And it's the same way in life. I don't have to rush. I need to slow down and listen. Because when I'm in a spiritual wilderness, I'm not hearing God. So I have to slow down and listen. Then this picture over here is my friend Ricardo. He told us we call him Richard, because most people can't pronounce Ricardo. I said, well, I watched Lucy when I was a kid. But I give him a trail name of Lionheart, Richard Lionheart. He weighed nearly 400 pounds when he started on that trail. Now I think he was pretty well off. His dad owned some car dealerships in Phoenix, and he was Hispanic, and I think he was just struggling. He was in his late 30s. Struggling with life, and he just packed up, did one camping trip, and came to that trail. And he walked the whole trail, 500 miles. And when I met him, we met him in the middle of the trail, and we started at the middle. He had a shirt that he showed me a picture where the buttons were about to bust out when he started. And when we met him, he could take that shirt like that. And this fellow here, he was ahead of me there, and that was obviously early in the morning because he was slow I mean, he had been out there for 3 months already, and but he was steady, and he just had the best attitude, and he just was steady. And I learned from him that if you just slow down, pace yourself, and this is in all areas of life, you'll get to where you're going. And even though we were so much faster and we weren't rushing, but he still was only 1 day behind us at the end. And we're very good friends today. I printed that picture out and sent it to him. But it's kind of, that picture, the reason I brought it today is it looks like how that to me represents a spiritual wilderness. Because you're all alone, there's nothing around, and that's where you can find God. And I looked in the Bible, Larry. I got a old, lightly used Schofield Study Bible, and one of them big concordances, back when I used to be a Sunday school teacher. And I looked in there, and I started to count them, but there's too many of them where it talks about wilderness in the Bible. It's very important. Wilderness is very important. And the one, in the Gospels, they all talk about Jesus venturing off into the wilderness. And the one I like the best is Matthew. And it talks about how, John the Baptist, I always, as a kid, I used to love to hear stories about John the Baptist, because he was trucking around out there in the wilderness with his loincloth on and his furs, and kind of always made me think, if you seen the movie Jeremiah Johnson, the old mountain man that he met that mentored him, kind of made me think that's like John the Baptist. John the Baptist was leading the way. And in the wilderness story in the Bible, in the Gospels, it talks about how Jesus went to John and says, "I need you to baptize me." And boy, I understand that now. Is really did Jesus really need baptized? Is what John said. You need to baptize me. You are the spoken one. You are the one the prophet spoke of. Do you really need me to baptize you? And he said, yeah, I do. And I think, to me, that kind of represents that Jesus is saying, you have as much God in you as I do. I need you to change me. And so Jesus had this, he did. So John baptized him. And Jesus come up from that baptism, and he was, I can just imagine he's thinking, okay, what now? I've done this. I know what my purpose is. What now? And so he goes off into the wilderness immediately. And it says in there, he was tempted by the devil and offered, kind of like where the devil wants to buy your soul. That's a spiritual wilderness. Jesus was in a real wilderness, and he was fasting, and he was thirsty. But he stuck to his faith that his Father had his back. God had his back. So he withstood the temptations that Satan, it says in the King James Version, was putting before him, to do. To me, that represents to me that when I'm given an option to do the right thing or the wrong thing, that's my spiritual wilderness. And I know that if I withstand, even though the right thing may be the hardest thing to do, that God has got my back. The Father has my back. He's going to bring me through it. I'm going to be stronger. I'm going to be better through it. So that's, since it is Christmas time and Jesus is what we're celebrating, that's one of my favorite lessons from him, is that even though I'm suffering, even though I may be in pain, I may be in discomfort, that if I keep focused on God, on the Father, that I will come through. He's got a purpose. He's got a reason. So how do I create the wilderness experience? When I went out there, you know, of course, we used electronics. We had GPS called Rosemary was afraid that she wouldn't be able to keep track of me. And so I had a
It's a church
GPS.
jam.
I had a GPS and I had a cell phone. And you didn't have cell phone service, right? But I still had it. But what we did is we didn't have it. You know, I had that GPS thing hung on my back. I would hear it beep every once in a while, but I never checked it. I never checked it until I got to camp and was unpacking. And so the way I did it is disconnect. You know, disconnect. Turn the cell phone off. Turn the TV off. You can do it in the living room. I used to have a meditation room. You can do it with yoga, I'm sure. You can do it with exercise, I'm sure. I do it sometimes on my Harley. You know, I just go out and just be. You know, I do it on my bicycle. Do it in my kayak. But it's just the fact of slowing down, letting go, and letting God, and listening. So I'll end on this. I found this printout when I Googled it, and it pretty much sums it up for me. And it says, the title of this, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but how to know when you're in the wilderness with God. It says, you will end up in the wilderness more than once in your life, and when you do, I hope you find comfort in knowing that the wilderness is the place where God speaks. And all you have to do is be listening. That's what I found. All I have to do is be listening. So when you know, the trials and tribulations is what they used to tell us in the church. You know, you'll go through trials and tribulations. God will put these things in front of you. Well, for me, what I've learned is God allows me to put them in my way. And then when I do my best to have prayer, meditation, and to follow, to listen. To me, that's what meditation is for me, is listening for God. When I do that, things just kind of smooth out. May be painful, but I always come out the other side a better person. And that's what I found happens to me when I do go into an actual, real physical, geographical wilderness, is I come out a different person. And I hope you get something out of that. And thank you for letting me talk.